Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're going to be making the world's best pulled pork barbecue sandwich. Now I know everybody says that, but this really is the world's best pulled pork barbecue sandwich. I promise you, you have never eaten one better than what we're going to make today. And we're going to give you all the tips and tricks and secrets to making it absolutely perfect. We're even going to tell you how to dress up your bun. I use pork loin. And I use pork loin for several reasons. It's a really good cut of meat for this. Doesn't have a lot of gristle. It has like the perfect ratio of fat to lean meat. And it is very, very inexpensive. This is the most economical way to feed a big crowd of people. This is 10 pounds here. I'm gonna cook about 6 of it up in my pulled pork sandwiches, and I'm going to save 4 pounds of it. I've got about a dozen center cut pork chops here that I'm going to marinate and then throw on the grill. So we're doing this recipe with 6 pounds today. And I took the end pieces for my pork loin, or out of my pork loin for my pulled pork sandwiches, because the center cut ones make prettier pork chops. Now that whole 10 pounds would make 50 to 60 pulled pork sandwiches, and it only cost me $15 because around all of the grilling out holidays and really about once a month, grocery stores still, even with prices being what they are, they will still put pork loin on sale for $1.49 to $1.99 a pound. At least once a month you can find it. So if you got to feed a crowd, pork loin is the way to go. Now I had mine sliced about 1 inch thick, and you do want to have it sliced if you're doing it for pulled pork sandwiches, because it eliminates all of those long strings that you get when you get a pulled pork sandwich that just pull all your pork off your bun and they make a mess everywhere, and nobody likes that. So we're going to cook this inside. I'm using my Dutch oven to cook it in, and we're going to cook it on we're going to start it on medium heat, turn it down to about medium low, and we're going to let it simmer covered for a couple of hours, which is going to make it super tender. So let's get the pot turned on here and get this started. Now you don't need to add anything into your pot before you start. I'm just putting my pork loin in there, and then I'm going to add all of my seasonings. Now I'm going to give you what you need per pound, because pork loin of course all has different weights, and you're going to need to fix it for different amounts of people. Every pound of pork loin will make somewhere between 5 and 6 pulled pork sandwiches. Even if you're using bigger buns. If you're using the small buns, you know, the 8 in the pack buns, like the store brand and stuff, you could get as many as 7 sandwiches that size out of a single pound of this. So that'll give you some idea how much you need to make for the crowd that you have to feed. And you're going to want a tablespoon of honey per pound of meat, and I've got about 5 tablespoons here or so, and a tablespoon of lemon juice. Again, I've got the same amount of lemon juice as honey, and about a tablespoon of onion powder. So those are all kind of equal, and that's the main seasoning in it. I'm also going to add salt and pepper. I do about a ½ teaspoon of each of those per pound, maybe a little more pepper because I like a little pepper in it. And then you're going to need about 1/4 cup of barbecue sauce per pound of meat. And you can adjust that, you can add more or less, but we're not going to add our barbecue sauce until we've let our meat simmer for a couple of hours and get really tender. And then we're going to add it and let it simmer with the barbecue sauce even longer. So let's go ahead and get these spices in here. You can hear this is already sizzling. The onion powder and lemon juice, and then you want to get your honey in. Now I do the honey because honey not only adds a little bit of sweetness, and a pulled pork sandwich is supposed to be a little bit sweet, but honey does add so much flavor. It's not just sweetness, it's sweetness and flavor. The lemon juice is going to make it much more tender, and it's going to add a ton of flavor to it. And of course, the onion powder definitely adds flavor to it. And this lemon juice and honey and onion powder in here, it's really going to cook up and make a thick sauce in this even before we add the barbecue sauce. I'm going to go ahead and add my salt and my pepper in here too. It looks like there's a lot of pepper in there, but as you cook spices, it kind of mutes the flavor of them. So you're going to want to add a little more than what you would add if you were just sprinkling a little pepper on it on the table. And also, a good pulled pork sandwich is supposed to have a little bit of heat to it, and that pepper will give it a little bit of heat. Now, if you want to add different kinds of peppers or more pepper, you go right ahead. Just kind of adjust this to suit your taste. The lemon juice and onion powder and honey, those are kind of my favorite seasonings. And every cook has their favorite seasonings, the flavors that their family enjoys. That's the flavor that my family enjoys, and it really does make a perfect sandwich. But if you have spices that you like on almost everything, then you go ahead and you add them in here, because that's the taste that you're used to. We just want to stir this up a little bit. You don't need to worry about, getting it super well combined, because as it cooks, all of that stuff, it's going to bubble and all that stuff is going to get mixed in there. But I do want to get some of my spices down in the bottom of my pot. And we're going to cover this. We're going to let it sit on the stove and let it cook. Turn it down now because it's bubbling to about medium-low for a couple of hours. And then in a couple of hours, we're going to bust it up and add our barbecue sauce and let it simmer some more. Now, the only thing I'm going to do to this for the next couple of hours is check on it, I don't know, a few times, rotate my pork loin chunks in there so that what's on the bottom doesn't burn. Now, if you get a little bit of browning in the bottom, or you get a little bit of browning on some of your pork loin, that's perfectly fine. That's going to give it a lot more flavor. And it's going to give it that impression that it was cooked on a grill, because when you grill food, you get that brown stuff on the outside, and a lot of folks think that pulled pork just has to be cooked on a grill. Well, it doesn't. It's much easier to cook it on your stove, and you can even cook it in your programmable pots, like your Instant Pot. If you have an Instant Pot and you want to put this in here, put it in it and cook it for about an hour under pressure. And then in about an hour, you can go to the step where we're going to add the barbecue sauce. You can also cook it in your slow cookers. You can put it in there in a slow cooker. You might want to put it in overnight and then get up the next morning and add your barbecue sauce. So you can cook it in any kind of pot on the stove like I'm doing. It'll take me about 3 or 4 hours on the stove. In a crock pot, you might want to do it overnight. Even if you use your pressure cookers, your Instant Pots and stuff, it's still going to take you a couple hours, because once you do that hour under pressure, then you're going to want to cook it about another hour with the barbecue sauce on it and let it get to the correct consistency, because you're going to have a lot of juice in it after that hour under pressure. So we're just going to let this sit here and simmer, and we'll be back in a couple hours and add our barbecue sauce. Okay, our pork loin's been cooking for a couple hours now, and I've stirred it 3 or 4 times, maybe 4, I don't know, not too much. You just want to rotate your pieces so that the bottom ones don't burn. And like I said, if you end up getting a little bit of browning on the bottom of yours, that's okay. It's just going to add a little flavor to it. It's not going to hurt it. Just keep an eye on it so it don't burn. You can see here I still have a lot of liquid in my pot. If you did it in a crock pot or an instant pot, you're probably going to have even more than this. Sometimes though, when you're cooking it on the stove, it tends to start to dry out a little bit, and if you don't have enough liquid in your pot, you can add water just about 1/4 cup at a time to keep it moist so it don't burn and stick to the bottom of the pot. Now, the pork loin, you don't have to worry about chunks of gristle or bone or any of that kind of stuff. And I know you've all had pulled pork sandwiches where you've got a big chunk of gristle in them. It is horrible. And that's one of the reasons why I like it. The other reason is the fat content. Now, pork loin does have some pretty big chunks of fat on it. And if you want to, at this point, it's cooked. It's got most of the flavor in it. And so you're not going to lose the flavor. You can actually remove some of those big chunks of fat if you don't want them in there. Just take a fork, usually is what I use, and they'll pull right off. And you can go through and take some of those out because, you know, you don't have to have them. You've already got the flavor. But you don't need to, because we're going to bust this up, and you can see there how it's busting up as I pull it off. But I know some people just don't want that much fat in their food, and like I said, if you want to take some of it out, you certainly can. It will reduce the calories of it some. But this is not going to, when we finish this and you eat these sandwiches, you're not going to get a big old chunk of fat like this in a single bite in your sandwich. We're going to bust this up and continue to cook it, which is going to continue to make this even more tender, and it's going to mix right in with the rest of it, and you're never going to taste that, because we've all also had pulled pork sandwiches where we've got a great big mouthful of fat in one bite, and it is just awful. I literally cannot stand that. And Brett quit eating pulled pork sandwiches until I started making this recipe, because he didn't like that. I mean, that, of course, I don't either. I just can't do that. But this is really unnecessary. You don't have to do that. I just wanted to pull a little bit of it off there and show you how easy it was to remove it if you wanted to. And my pork is tender. It's done. It's falling apart pretty easy. And it's been falling apart as I've stirred it. But if you've got one of these little gadgets right here, it makes it much easier to bust it up. Now you can use the tongs, you can use like a egg spatula, you know, something sharp and kind of tough. But we want to bust it up now because we're going to add the barbecue sauce. And we want to get that barbecue sauce really mixed in the meat. We're not going to completely bust it up because we're going to continue to cook it, and as we stir it, it's going to continue to break down into smaller and smaller chunks. Having it sliced before you cook it is not absolutely necessary, but it makes it cook much faster. It eliminates the long strings that you get that pull out of your pulled pork sandwiches and make them really hard to eat and really messy and choke you to death. And it also improves the flavor, because the flavors, your spices and your barbecue sauce and all that stuff, can get mixed in your pork much better. And it just improves the texture, it improves the flavor, it decreases the cooking time, which is always good. And it makes a really good sandwich if you have it sliced first. If you happen to have a pork loin in your freezer that you want to use for this, that you bought on sale, make sure you defrost it before you start this recipe. If you cook meat, and this is any meat that is frozen, and you don't completely defrost it, it's gonna make it tough. So freezing it and then cooking it makes it a little bit tough anyway. But if you completely defrost it before you cook it, it will be much, much better than if you try to start cooking it while it's still partially frozen. So if you've got one in the freezer, make sure you completely defrost it before you start cooking it. Okay, that looks pretty good there. Said I'm not going to worry about the fat chunks in mine. If you want to remove them, you can literally remove every single chunk of fat out of this, and it makes the whole thing much leaner. It would reduce the calories a little bit if you wanted to reduce the calories, but I don't see the need in doing that unless it's just something that you feel like you need to do, because those chunks of fat will continue to cook, and as we continue to cook it and stir it, those chunks of fat are going to get smaller and smaller, and they're going to blend right in, and you're not going to get them in your sandwich. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and add my barbecue sauce. And like I said, check your moisture content. If it's too dry, just add a little water. And once you add this barbecue sauce, you're going to want to keep an eye on it, a closer eye on it. You're going to want to check on it maybe every 15 minutes. And if it starts to get too dry, just add a little water, about 1/4 cup at a time, to keep it from drying out and keep it from burning. And you also want to stir it about every 15 minutes because you want to continue to bust up the pork and get it in smaller pieces so that it will make a good sandwich. Like some of these chunks, you wouldn't want that on your sandwich. If you bit into it, it would be too much to chew at once, and it will pull half of it off your sandwich. So continue to cook it and stir it, and as you cook it and stir it, keep an eye on the moisture. I have plenty in here, and if you used an Instant Pot or a crock pot, you're going to have plenty too. Well, we've had our barbecue sauce in our pork for almost an hour, and a lot of the liquid is cooked off, but it's not quite ready yet. While it cooks just another second, let's talk about the buns and about this recipe just a little bit. There are 3 main ingredients in the recipe are the pork that you use in it, and I really highly recommend the pork loin. It just is the best cut for the barbecue sandwiches. It works out absolutely perfect with a minimal amount of work, and it's the least expensive. You can make these sandwiches for less than 50 cents a piece, which means if you got a big crowd to feed, you can feed them for less than $1 a person if you make sides like potato salad, coleslaw, macaroni salad, and stuff like that with it. You can make this recipe ahead of time. It freezes well, and I always make extra, and I'll put some in vacuum seal bags, and I'll seal it up, and I'll put it in the freezer, and then I pull it out when I need a quick meal, especially if I have people stop by unexpected and I got to get dinner ready. And making it ahead of time, you can cater your own event. If you're having a big cookout, if you're having an office party, a housewarming, we have catered weddings with this. This was one of the specials at yesteryear, and we had several people who would order it with potato salad and coleslaw and macaroni salad and beans and stuff, and for their wedding. And we have done family weddings with this. This is a really good recipe if you are on a budget and you have, you're doing your wedding and you want to do everything yourself, or you and your family do it. This can be made ahead of time. You can put it in a crock pot and keep it warm all day long. Just keep an eye on how much moisture is in it. And if you're making it ahead of time and reheating it, you might have to adjust the moisture a little bit, and you might want to add a little bit more barbecue sauce or something to it. But it's great to make ahead of time, and I always make it ahead of time when I'm serving it, because I can get all my sides done, I can get this cooked, and then when people come over, all I have to do is warm this up and sit everything out, and I can enjoy the cookout or the whatever is going on. I don't have to spend all day in the kitchen. I've already done it. I can get me a glass of iced tea and sit back and relax and visit with everybody. And there probably is not another recipe on the planet where you can feed people a full meal for $1 each. And you can do that if you make all the stuff yourself. And making it ahead of time, you're not going to be rushed and you're not going to be exhausted when everybody gets there. It's good for all of your football parties or your sports parties, all the tailgating and game day stuff like that, office parties, church get-togethers, and we use this a lot for fundraisers. When the kids were little and they were in youth group and doing other things like that, we were always having to raise money for something. And these are great for fundraisers because you can make it ahead of time, and then when you're sitting up at a festival or whatever, all you got to worry about is getting it warm. And you can go ahead and fix the sides to go with it so you have something there that people want and they'll come to your booth. You can make a ton of money with this. I mean, you know, $15 for the pork to make. For fundraisers, I always use the small buns, and we would get 70 sandwiches maybe out of that $15 worth of pork, and then all we had to add to it was the buns, and you know, they're not very expensive, the small ones. So this is a really great fundraiser idea. And for office parties and stuff like that, church picnics and stuff where you've got to feed a lot of people and you're always on a budget, this is a good option. So hang on to this recipe. You're going to want to keep it, especially the way grocery prices are going. And this 4th of July, you don't need to worry about limiting the number of people that you have to celebrate with, because you can feed them all, and you can feed them all without breaking the bank or taking out a loan. I mean, this is a really good economical recipe, and people are absolutely gonna love it. The next ingredient is the barbecue sauce. Now, you want to pick a barbecue sauce that you like and your family likes. If you have your own recipe, that's great. If you're using a jar, make sure it's not something with a strange taste that you've never tried before, because your sandwiches are going to taste like that barbecue sauce. I like a sweet honey barbecue sauce. Something with a little bit of spice in it is good too, because that sweet spicy thing, that's what barbecue sandwiches are supposed to be. But you pick a sauce that you know and you like, or you know, make your own. But the sauce is as important as the pork in it, and it's as important as how you cook it, because it's so much of the flavor. And the next thing is the bun. Now, the bun is a big part of the sandwich, so the better the bun, the better your sandwich is going to be. But you can use the little 8-packs, the store brand that you can get for 99 cents, especially around the holidays. All the stores have them on sale. They are perfectly fine. But there's a trick to making any bun taste great. No matter how good the bun is, this is going to make it taste better, and it's going to make your pulled pork sandwich stand apart from everybody else's. You want to butter your bun and either put it on the grill or put it in the oven and toast it. And the toasted bun with the butter on it is going to add extra flavor, and it's going to keep the bun from getting soggy. I talked about how we've all had those sandwiches with the strings that pull out and the chunks that pull out, and you get the gristle. These don't have any of that. And if you toast the bun, your bun is not going to get soggy and fall apart. It's going to taste so much better. You're not going to believe the difference a little bit of butter and toasting it will make. And you can toast it under the broiler in your oven. You can toast it on the grill. You can even put them on a griddle or a skillet and lay them face down and toast them that way. Doesn't matter. Just make sure you toast that bun. And Brett will not eat a pulled pork sandwich that doesn't have a toasted bun. He said it's an absolute must, and it really, really is. I mean, it improves it so much. You're not going to believe the difference. So if you've never had one on a buttered toasted bun, give it a try. The really high-end barbecue places, they always do that. And when we did the special at yesteryear, we toasted the buns and put the butter on them. It's just a world of difference. Okay, you can see here I still have quite a bit of liquid, and I have not added any liquid to this at all. But in that few minutes there that I was talking to y'all, it started kind of trying to stick to the bottom of the pan. Once you add the barbecue sauce, it is definitely going to try to stick to the bottom of your pan. So you do have to keep an eye on it. You can also see here that it's in much smaller chunks than when I first added the barbecue sauce and busted it up. A little bit of sticking in the bottom is not a bad thing because it's going to give you a few little brown pieces. You just want to make sure it doesn't stick so much that it starts to burn. And I actually always try to get a few of those little brown pieces in there because it kind of gives the impression that it's being cooked on a grill. And lots of folks think that it's not really pulled pork unless it's cooked on a grill. So this will give you that texture, and it really kind of adds in the same flavor. You can put this on the grill and keep it warm on a grill and cook, you know, hot dogs or the rest of your pork loin as pork chops or hamburgers or whatever with it, and have this at your cookout. Or if it's 199 degrees and you don't want to go outside, you can have your pulled pork inside and sit in the air conditioner. If you're doing it in the wintertime for one of your game day parties, you know, you don't have to go outside in the cold and grill. You can do it all inside. When you get this really close to done, if you're not gonna be keeping it warm for hours, take your lid off and just stir it like I'm doing it now until you get the liquid boiled off and you get it the consistency that you want it. Now I'm getting really close right now. You don't want it completely dried out, but you don't want soup barbecue sandwiches either. If it has too much moisture in it, it's going to drip everywhere, and even a toasted bun is going to get soggy. You don't want it so dry that it's hard to eat because it's too dry, but you definitely don't want it dripping everywhere. And we're getting really close to the correct consistency. I still have some pretty big chunks of pork in here, but if you're gonna be saving some of this for leftovers, or you're gonna be keeping it warm for a while, you might want to leave some of those in there. And as you make the sandwiches, anything that's too big, just bust it up a little bit more as you're putting it on your buns. Okay, I'm going to turn this off. Now, you can turn this all the way down on low, and like I said, keep it warm all day long, or you can put it in a crock pot and keep it warm all day long. If you're doing something like a wedding, or you're having a great big party and people are going to be coming in and out and eating, you know, as the day goes on, that's fine. As long as you keep it warm, it will stay good. Keep an eye on the moisture in it, you know, and adjust it, because you will have to add a little bit of water to it. Just add it like a quarter of a cup at a time as the day goes on. When we did it for the specials at yesteryear, we would get it ready about 11 o'clock and we would serve it until we closed at 5 o'clock. But we would keep it warm all day, and I would keep an eye on the moisture, and it was fine. You do have to keep the temperature up, you know, food safety stuff, but it doesn't hurt the flavor of it at all. And in fact, the longer it cooks, the better it gets. Just don't let it dry out. Now I still have, you can see here, quite a bit of moisture, but because it's not all going to be eaten at once and it will be kept warm for a while, you want to leave a little bit in there. So your first few sandwiches, you want to kind of grab off of the top and leave a lot of that moisture in there so that the first few sandwiches, folks don't get that soggy bun. Sliders, I couldn't even guess how many sliders you could get out of this if you wanted to put this on the little slider buns or the Hawaiian rolls, and you could certainly do that. These big buns like I have here, you're gonna do, maybe between 5 and 6 sandwiches. The smaller buns, the regular sized ones, you're gonna get at least 6, maybe 8 sandwiches even out of a pound. Usually 7's about the average that I get. But I'm not talking about scrimpy little sandwiches either. I'm talking about sandwiches like this that have plenty of pork on them and plenty of flavor, and nobody's going to complain. But you can see here that there's no great big chunks of fat. There's no great big chunks that are going to pull half of the pork off the sandwich. You don't see, any of that stuff that you don't like when you get a pulled pork sandwich, any of that very unappetizing stuff. It's not so juicy that it's going to drip all over me, and because the bun's toasted, it's not going to fall apart and get all over me. You're going to be able to sit down and enjoy this and eat with your friends and your family without having it all over your face and your clothes and just making a giant mess. You might drip a piece, but it's not going to fall all to pieces. Hang on to this recipe because it's one of those that I got a feeling everybody's going to need. The grocery prices just seem to be getting higher and higher and higher, and it's one of those that you can use for all kinds of events. I will link the potato salad and the coleslaw and some pasta salad or macaroni salad if you're from the South in the description of this video, so you got everything you need to do your get together, your party, whatever it is you're having, and you don't have to worry about it. You can do it all ahead of time, get it ready, and enjoy your party. Before we go, I want to leave y'all with Psalm 33:12. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. This weekend, we celebrate our nation's birthday, and a lot of folks are going to be making barbecue, and I hope a lot of y'all are making our pulled pork sandwiches. And we're going to be getting together and celebrating the birth of our nation with our friends and our family. And this year we have so much to thank God for. And I mean, the year that he has brought us through and the gifts that he has given us as we have come through it, and how he continues to bless us. So take time as you celebrate this weekend with your friends and family to thank God for giving us America and allowing us to live here, but also take time to pray for our country, that he continues to preserve our nation and he continues to bless our nation, and that he reunites us. Happy birthday, America, and God bless you all. I want to thank all of you so much for joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen, and if you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. And until next time, remember to put God first.